French President Emmanuel Macron was warmly greeted by Czech leader Peter Fiala at a castle in Prague on Thursday.
Thank you for the idea.
Macron is among leaders of European nations and some from outside of the European Union, gathering to discuss shared security and energy problems. It's a rare and symbolic summit of some 44 states, with one notable absence: Russia. This Prague gathering is the brainchild of the French leader, the inaugural meeting of what Macron calls the European political community.
The objective is to share the same understanding of the situation, which is affecting Europe, and to battle out a common strategy, so a strategic conversation, which doesn't really exist at the moment, and which could reduce the divisions. And I hope that we can come out of this with a common project.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that many of the problems facing those gathered stemmed from Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. He told reporters, quote, "We don't accept that part of a neighboring country is annexed." But beyond lofty declarations, there were doubts about the forum's concrete goals and actions. And apart from unity in the face of Russian military aggression, it's unclear what this gathering really unites or what it might accomplish. In addition to core EU members such as the German Chancellor, inside the castle, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan put a friendly hand on the shoulder of North Macedonian Prime Minister Dimitar Kovacevski. Both nations are currently candidates to join the EU. Also present was the leader of a former EU nation, the new UK Prime Minister Liz Truss. Pushing the boundary of what constituted Europe, Macron sat down with the president of Azerbaijan and the prime minister of Armenia, two former Soviet republics east of Turkey, who saw a fierce flare-up in armed conflict between them last month before a truce cooled things down. Some dismissed the European Political Community, or EPC, as just talking shop.
I would to thank so much to Mr. President Emmanuel Macron for coming up with the idea of EPC.
At a news conference, the president of the European Commission said no major platform had been adopted.
We did not adopt any official resolution. We just feel the need of having a space for informal exchange of views on ongoing events in Europe and beyond.
Anything more might be difficult to manage, not just because of its size, but also because of its diversity and the traditional rivalries between many of its members, from Armenia and Azerbaijan to Greece and Turkey. The 27 EU member countries will go on to meet separately on Friday.
Every 5 years, China's Communist Party members gather in the thousands for a congress that's been taking place since 1921. To the untrained eye, it can seem dull or routine, a sea of officials in dark suits. However, it can say a lot about the party's plans for China. This year, for the 20th installment, it's all about this man, Xi Jinping, who's widely expected to defy convention and secure an unprecedented third term as supreme leader.
This will effectively cement his status as China's most powerful leader since Mao Zedong.
Beneath him, Xi will unveil his new leadership team and a sweeping reshuffle of China's elite. We spoke to Reuters' Greater China bureau chief, Tony Monroe, about how the shake-up will affect decisions on everything from the economy to COVID-19, both at home and abroad.
There's a lot of global interest in the Party Congress. It takes place only once every 5 years. The process is opaque and mostly happens behind closed doors.
Specifically, these doors of the Great Hall of the People on Beijing's Tiananmen Square. It's a major political meeting. In mid-October, 2,300 party members from across the country will gather.
And the expectation is, of course, that Xi Jinping will be conferred to a third leadership term. Having said that, we still don't know who will join him on the Politburo Standing Committee, and in particular, who will be tapped to replace the current premier, Li Keqiang.
The Politburo Standing Committee will be the most closely watched unveiling. At the end of the confab, politicians walk across the stage behind Xi. This will be the new engine of the party.
中共19届一中全会上
Will Xi's role change? Some say unlikely. Xi holds 3 key titles: General Secretary of the Communist Party, Chairman of the Central Military Commission, and President. he's expected to retain all three.
It would be a surprise if he didn't retain all three positions, given that he is perceived to have basically neutralized any meaningful opposition to his leadership during his 10 years in power.
Some pundits have suggested he'll become chairman, like Mao, a title that was abolished in 1982. But there's been no sign he will adopt it. The new leadership will set policy in China for the next 5 years and beyond. For example, over when China may begin to ease its stringent zero-COVID policy.
Broadly speaking, the expectation is for continuity, and that means we can expect to see China continuing to assert itself as a rising economic and geopolitical and military power, and as a global representative or champion of the emerging world, in contrast with the Western or US-led, post-war order. And that manifests itself in continuing to press its claim on Taiwan. And broadly speaking, I think the default expectation is that we would see more of China moving in that direction. China has given very little indication as to how or when it may begin to exit from zero COVID. The challenge for China is that there is, broadly speaking, a lack of herd immunity. So opening the borders and letting COVID in, as it were, could have quite significant consequences for public health. And it is not clear whether China is ready to deal with that or how it plans to manage that. However, there is growing pressure economically for China to ease up or ease back on zero COVID, and it's a policy that increasingly critics say is just not sustainable for the long term.
Congratulations, Ayushman ji, correct डॉक्टर जी। एक मूवी से आप तहलका मचाने वाले हमारी इंडस्ट्री में, क्योंकि आपकी फिल्में हमेशा डिफरेंट होती है, कैसे होती है, अलग अंदाज में होती है। इस बार आप डॉक्टर जी से आ रहे, थोड़ा बहुत जानना चाहिए। ट्रेलर तो काफ़ी इंटरेस्टिंग है, पसंद है, मुझे बहुत ही पसंद है। लेकिन आपसे जानना चाहिए कि डॉक्टर जी किस अंदाज में आप दिखने वाले हैं ऑडियंस की।
डॉक्टर जी एक बहुत ही अनोखी फिल्म है, यूनिक फिल्म है, जिसकी कहानी है कि एक मेल गायनेकोलॉजिस्ट की जर्नी है। नॉर्मली जो गायनेकोलॉजिस्ट जो होते हैं, जो डॉक्टर बच्चा पैदा करते हैं, आम तौर पर जनता एक्सपेक्ट करती है कि फ़ीमेल डॉक्टर हो, लेकिन ये कहानी एक मेल डॉक्टर की है और पूरे डिपार्टमेंट में सिर्फ ये इकलौता मर्द है। और उसकी जर्नी फ्रॉम a sexist person to somebody who becomes a feminist or maybe जो एक उसका एक हृदय परिवर्तन होता है ज़िंदगी में। सो इसकी कहानी है फिल्म।
मैंने सुना कि रियल लाइफ में भी आप डॉक्टर बनने वाले थे, कुछ डिग्री भी हासिल करनी थी, तो उसके बारे में अगर कुछ बताना चाहें। डॉक्टर से एक्टर तक का जो सफ़र रहा आयुष्मान जी का, सिंगर एक्टर।
डिग्री मैंने हासिल नहीं की थी, पर हाँ MBBS के एग्ज़ाम दिए थे, पर मेरी BDS में कहीं सिलेक्शन हो गई थी किसी कर्नाटका के किसी कॉलेज में, पर मैं गया नहीं था वहाँ पर। अचानक ही वहाँ पर मुझे रियलाइजेशन हुई कि मुझे एक्टर बनना चाहिए। और मेरा मानना ये है कि रियल लाइफ हीरो वैसे डॉक्टर होते हैं, और इस फिल्म में यही बताया गया है कि डॉक्टर्स की अहमियत कितनी होती है ज़िंदगी में। मुझे लगता नहीं आज तक कोई ऐसी फिल्म बनी है जिन्होंने डॉक्टर्स को एज अ प्रोफेशन इतना सीरियसली लिया हो। इट्स अ वेरी वेल रिसर्च्ड फिल्म।
तो फिल्म की अगर मैं बात करूँ, बहुत सारे आप हैं, कैसा रहा सभी के साथ का एक्सपीरियंस जब आप आते हैं सभी के साथ?
इस फिल्म में सबसे अच्छी बात है कि फ़ीमेल गेज़ है। फ़ीमेल गेज़ का मतलब ये कि बहुत अच्छे कैरेक्टर्स फ़ीमेल एक्टर्स प्ले कर रहे हैं। चाहे रकुल का कैरेक्टर डॉक्टर फातिमा का हो, या फिर शेफाली शाह जी का कैरेक्टर डॉक्टर नंदिनी का हो, हमारी डायरेक्टर अनुभूति कश्यप, एसोसिएट DOP जो हैं वो भी, और हमारे प्रोड्यूसर अमृता। आई थिंक एक बहुत ही फीमेल गेज जिसे बोलते हैं, एक नारी प्रधान क्रू है हमारा. सो दैट्स वाई आपको एक बहुत ही एक प्रोग्रेसिव फिल्म देखने को मिलेगी डॉक्टर जी. सो इट वाज फन वर्किंग विद ऑल ऑफ देम.
एंड एक्टिंग की दुनिया में आपको डिफरेंट अंदाज में देखते रहते हैं, सिंगिंग के दुनिया में भी आपको देखते हैं. जब आप डॉक्टर के पूरे वर्दी में आए ना, अपने आप को सबसे पहले देखा, क्या कुछ फीलिंग थी, कुछ ऐसी आई कि हाँ यही मैं बनना चाहता था, आज उस किरदार पे भी आप जी?
देखिए मुझे लगता है कि हाँ डॉक्टर बनना चाहता था, पर मैं डॉक्टर आई थिंक एक्टर ज़्यादा अच्छा था इसलिए डॉक्टर नहीं बन पाया. अगर डॉक्टर अच्छा तो शायद डॉक्टर बन जाता अगर मैं साइंस में इतना अच्छा होता तो. पर हाँ एक इट वाज लाइक अ पार्ट ऑफ माई बकेट लिस्ट कि मैं डॉक्टर प्ले करूँ स्क्रीन पर. क्योंकि डॉक्टर्स पे इतनी फिल्में नहीं आई. मैं हमेशा जो कुछ नहीं होता है अक्सर हमारी सिनेमा में वो मैं करना चाहता हूँ. एंड इस फिल्म के ज़रिए वो करने का मौका मिला है मुझे.
टैगलाइन भी है इनकी तो लग गई थी.
या
फिल्म के जरिए आप किनकी लगाने वाले हैं आप बॉक्स ऑफिस?
या लेट्स सी. अभी तो बहुत ही अनप्रिडिक्टेबल है बॉक्स ऑफिस हमारा, पर ये है ज़रूर कि ये फिल्म को प्यार ज़रूर मिलेगा. लोग जो देखेंगे फिल्म उनको अच्छी ज़रूर लगेगी. क्योंकि है एक कहानी, क्रिस्प कहानी है, 2 घंटे से छोटी है. एंड इट्स अ ब्यूटीफुल स्टोरी. मज़ा आएगा आपको देख. या 14 अक्टूबर. और ये वो डेट है जब मेरे पेरेंट्स की एनिवर्सरी भी है. या सो ये कोइंसिडेंस हुआ है. सो आई एम लुकिंग फॉरवर्ड टू दिस डेट. हाँ मतलब हाँ बिल्कुल होने वाला है. पेरेंट्स अगर सेलिब्रेट करेंगे तो वाई नॉट. एंड आई होप ये फिल्म अच्छा करे और उनको भी रीज़न मिले और सेलिब्रेट करने का.
Pakistan is on the verge of collapse, not just economically, but socially as well, and the voices of dissent are growing strong. Some of the worst human rights crimes are committed in a nation where the military and Islamic fundamentalists rule the roost. 3 of Pakistan's provinces, Sindh, Balochistan, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, still remain underdeveloped, where poverty and malnutrition are rampant. The government does not appear to make any effort to upgrade the educational or medical infrastructure. Those brave individuals who demand their fundamental rights are facing persecution at the hands of security agencies and Islamic fundamentalists. The activists further accuse the authorities of discrimination and carelessness in carrying out rescue operations, even though the country is experiencing catastrophic flooding. In locations where there has been significant damage caused by the floods, activists are calling for international help to save Pakistan's forgotten residents.
It is the Pakistani military establishment that has unleashed human rights atrocities on the Sindhi people that are going unnoticed by the international community. And these human rights violations range from physical elimination of the Sindhi people in shape of extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearances to their cultural, economic exploitation.
During the 51st session of the UN Human Rights Council, the Sindhis, Baloch, Pashtuns, and activists from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir raised their voices for justice. According to the Human Rights Watch Report 2021, the authorities in Pakistan expanded their use of draconian sedition and counterterrorism laws to stifle dissent and strictly regulated civil society groups critical of government actions or policies. Women, religious minorities, and transgender people continue to face violence, discrimination, and persecution, with authorities failing to provide adequate protection or hold offenders accountable. The government has turned a blind eye to law enforcement agencies' brazen acts of torture and other serious abuses. The political activists from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir blame the army and other authorities for exploiting their natural resources. Meanwhile, the indigenous people continue to live in abject poverty.
हमें किसी किस्म की कोई आज़ादी नहीं है. हमारे तमाम नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज पे आर्मी कब्जा किए हुए है. और फिर सबसे बड़े जुल्म की बात यह है कि हमारी फॉरेस्ट लैंड जो है वो आर्मी ने अलाट करवा दी है डिफरेंट एरियाज़ के अंदर. और जितने भी टूरिस्ट रिजॉर्ट्स थे उन पे कब्जा करके मकामी लोगों के लिए उन एरियाज़ को बैन कर दिया है.
In April of 2021, the European Parliament passed a resolution on the deplorable human rights violations in Pakistan and called for an immediate review of Pakistan's eligibility for GSP Plus status, which grants Pakistan trade benefits on condition of its compliance with human rights obligations. During a recent visit to Islamabad, MEPs from the European Parliament's Subcommittee on Human Rights discussed a wide range of human rights topics in their meetings with Pakistan's top political leaders. The MEPs said it was important for Pakistan to undertake timely reforms and legislative changes on human rights issues and to translate them into concrete improvements. They called for determined and structured action, including the swift adoption of laws against torture and enforced disappearances, steps to substantially reduce the number of crimes carrying the death penalty, and to apply the new procedures for mercy petitions. Despite facing pressure from international organizations, the human rights situation in Pakistan remains grim, and voices of dissent are on the rise.
We are today the fifth largest economy in nominal terms. Our expectation by the end of the decade is that we'll be the third. My budget is actually growing. Foreign, development assistance, foreign involvement, sending your people out are not popular. In my country it is. The public actually supports a greater foreign policy presence, footprint and involvement. We are today the fifth largest economy in nominal terms. Our expectation by the end of the decade is that we'll be the third. We will probably, in the next few years, be the largest, most populated country in the world. I think if you look in terms of our capabilities and our, I would say, contributions to the big issues, the big challenges of the world, climate change, pandemics, counter-terrorism, I think we will weigh in much more. And what I suspect we will bring to bear is actually the experiences of what is a civilization. That a polity which in some form or the other has existed over 5,000 years. And there is a lot, 5,000 years is a reasonable learning curve. There's a lot that you have sort of picked up over this period, and I think you can, we would like to bring that to bear. And I want to drive home this point that, the India which is, growing in size, which is becoming more capable, more prosperous, it's also a much more international India. When I look at, my younger colleagues today, even within my own family, my nieces and nephews, I mean, their sense of the world is so different and so much more knowledgeable and involved than it would have been mine 40, 50 years ago when I was their age.
You're presenting a picture of a confident India.
Yes, indeed, and also a connected India. I see events in the world which Indians respond to. It's not like, we are doing well and this is our space and, you sort of limit yourself to it. I think, I mean, if I can be a little undiplomatic here, in a lot of countries, foreign policy, foreign, development assistance, foreign involvement, sending your people out are not popular. In my country it is. I enjoy the benefits of it as a foreign minister. That the public actually supports a greater foreign policy presence, footprint and involvement. My budget is actually growing.
India has been at the forefront of the global fight against terrorism. As a country which itself has been a victim of state-sponsored cross-border terrorism for nearly past 3 decades, India is acutely aware of the socio-economic and human cost of terrorism. In 1996, long before the adoption of Resolution 1373, India took the initiative to pilot the draft Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism with the objective of providing a comprehensive legal framework to combating terrorism. We have signed and ratified all the major conventions and protocols on terrorism adopted by the UN and are part of all major global initiatives, including FATF. India has been contributing proactively to further international cooperation to combat financing of terrorism at regional and international level. In 2018, India contributed $550,000 to the UN OCS programs targeting capacity building of countries in East and Southern Africa. In 2021 too, we have contributed $1 million to further strengthen these efforts. Sixth, we need to support the national and regional security initiatives, as well as capacity building efforts towards effective border surveillance and security.
Perhaps the best way of pursuing economic opportunities right now was to encourage more business collaborations. I use that word, that phrase, playing to our strengths. We certainly believe that there's a lot that New Zealand businesses have to offer to India. I'm sure that feeling is reciprocated on the New Zealand side. So at the moment, the focus, the priority would be on enhancing business collaboration.
A fair trade agreement at this time is not a priority for New Zealand or India. However, that hasn't stopped us from trying to find ways that there are other opportunities to work together to derive some mutual benefit in terms of economic relationships. And that's been the nature of our conversation today, is can we seek out further opportunities to gain mutual benefit in our economic relationships. The Minister this morning spent time talking to a business community, our business community. I think we have identified that there are niche areas where we can absolutely derive mutual benefit in the digital space, in spaces where we can maybe share innovation that will contribute to some of our joint ambitions. So that's been really the very focus of our discussion.
Is FTA off the table, Minister?
It's not our priority right at this moment.
In terms of our meeting today, obviously a large part of our conversation went to strengthening our bilateral relationship. And the sum and substance of it was really an understanding that we should play to each other's strengths, which specifically meant business, education, technology, the digital world, agricultural trade, talent, and most of all, people-to-people connect, because that's at the heart of both our societies. We spoke a bit about the need for better air connectivity. I also raised with the Minister concerns which some of our students have faced, students who had to leave New Zealand during the COVID period and who didn't have the opportunity to get their visas renewed. I urged a fairer and more sympathetic treatment for them.
हमारा इनके साथ आप लोगों के साथ खड़े होने की वजह सबसे बड़ी बात तो यही है कि हिमाचल के ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में दूर दराज के इलाके में जहां कर्मचारी पहुंचाना मुश्किल हो जाता है, पहुंचाया तो फिर वहां रखना मुश्किल हो जाता है, टिकाना मुश्किल हो जाता है, वहां कोई अगर काम कर रहे थे, टिक करके काम कर रहे थे, ईमानदारी से काम कर रहे थे, तो हमारे वो पीटीए के हमारे साथी करते थे। इसलिए कभी मन में भाव था कि कभी हो, क्योंकि मेरे विधानसभा क्षेत्र के अधिकांश स्कूल जो है वो पीटीए के माध्यम से चल रहे थे, एसएमसी के माध्यम से बाद में चल रहे थे कुछ जगह। तो ऐसे हालात में हमने इस बात को लेकर के तय किया कि जो लोग ऐसी विकट परिस्थितियों में काम कर रहे हैं, जब भविष्य के सामने एक बहुत बड़ा प्रश्न चिन्ह है, कल मालूम नहीं क्या होगा, जो निश्चित नहीं था, लेकिन फिर भी एक मकसद के साथ लगे हैं कि हमें काम करना है।
श्री राम जन्मभूमि आंदोलन 1949 से यह आंदोलन प्रारंभ होता है। 1983 में श्री राम जन्मभूमि मुक्ति की समिति का गठन होने के साथ यह आंदोलन आगे बढ़ता है। पूरे देश के अंदर इस आंदोलन को विश्व हिंदू परिषद के नेतृत्व में पूज्य संतों ने जो धार की थी, बहुत सारे लोग बोलते थे परिणाम कुछ नहीं आने वाला है, लेकिन हम तो भगवान श्री कृष्ण के कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मां फलेषु कदाचन इस भाव में विश्वास करते हैं, इस उपदेश पर विश्वास करते हैं। फल की चिंता नहीं, कर्म पर विश्वास करते हैं, निष्काम कर्म पर विश्वास करते हैं। और पूज्य संतों ने अपने आंदोलन के माध्यम से साबित किया, तो परिणाम तो आना ही आना था। आज अयोध्या में श्री राम जन्मभूमि के भव्य मंदिर निर्माण का कार्य भी प्रारंभ हो चुका है। हम सब जानते हैं प्रधानमंत्री जी ने अयोध्या में श्री राम जन्मभूमि मंदिर निर्माण के कार्यक्रम को आगे बढ़ाया। अब तक 50% से अधिक कार्य श्री राम जन्मभूमि मंदिर निर्माण का आगे बढ़ चुका है।
इस देश में और इस राज्य में ये छत्रपति शिवाजी महाराज की पावन भूमि है। इसमें पाकिस्तान जिंदाबाद के नारे देने का कोई अधिकार किसी को नहीं है। ये देशभक्त राष्ट्रभक्तों का राज्य है, इसलिए उनका पूरा बंदोबस्त जो हमारा गृह विभाग करेगा। ये किसी को ऐसे नारे देने का अधिकार नहीं है। सरकार पूरी तरह इस बात को गंभीरता से लिया हुआ है।
मैंने जब एट द एज ऑफ 7 में मार्शल आर्ट स्टार्ट किया है। मैं पहले मिक्सड मार्शल आर्ट्स खेलती थी, तो वो मैंने खेला है 5-6 साल तक, और उसके बाद मैंने देखा कि इसमें कोई स्कोप नहीं है जो मैं मार्शल आर्ट्स खेल रही हूँ, क्योंकि मुझे अपना फ्यूचर भी देखना था अपने जो मैं मार्शल आर्ट्स खेलती हूँ। तो उसके बाद मैं मिली इकबाल सर से, जो कि CEO है पेंटेक्सलाट फेडरेशन के। तो उन्होंने मुझे बहुत सपोर्ट किया। मैंने इसमें कई स्टेट खेले हैं, 4-5 स्टेट खेले हुए हैं मैंने, डिस्ट्रिक्ट 4-5 खेले हुए हैं, और नेशनल मेडलिस्ट में गोल्ड मेडलिस्ट हूँ 2 टाइम्स।
इन्होंने काफ़ी मेहनत करी है इस कंपटीशन में आने के लिए। इससे पहले इनको काफ़ी अलग अलग स्ट्रीमों से जाना पड़ा। जैसे इन्होंने पहले डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल पे खेला, काफ़ी सालों से पेंचेक्सलाट गेम खेल रही है, और लास्ट ईयर जब ये डिस्ट्रिक्ट स्टेट से निकल के नेशनल भी खेली, नेशनल में भी इनके गोल्ड मेडल है, आप देख सकते हो उनके सर्टिफिकेट्स, मेडल्स। तो वहाँ से जब ये क्वालिफाई होगी इस साल, लकीली वर्ल्ड चैम्पियनशिप के ट्रायल्स थे एंड शी गॉट क्वालिफाइड फॉर द ट्रायल्स। उससे पहले जो नेशनल और फेडरेशन कप था उन्होंने उसमें काफ़ी अच्छा परफॉर्मेंस दिया, और उसके बाद ऑन द बेसिस एंड ऑन द क्राइटेरिया ऑफ नेशनल एंड फेडरेशन कप शी गॉट सिलेक्टेड फॉर द वर्ल्ड पेंचेक्सलाट चैम्पियनशिप।